I never thought a simple property line could spark a war, but the night I found a bright orange HOA notice nailed to my front door, everything changed. Within days, strangers claimed my backyard as community space, ripped out my fence, and slapped me with fines bigger than my mortgage. Every letter, every threat felt like a countdown, until the board made one move too many. And I decided I wouldn't be their quiet victim. What would you do if your own neighborhood tried to erase your home from the map? Samantha and her husband Mark thought they'd found their forever home the day they turned onto Willow Creek Lane. The street curved like a quiet river, lined with tall maples that swayed in the breeze and showered the sidewalks with golden leaves each fall. Their little brick house sat at the edge of a wooded lot, a place where morning sunlight streamed through the trees and cardinals nested near the kitchen window. Neighbors waved when they moved in, dropping off pies and phone numbers for anything you need. It felt safe, like a community where everyone looked out for each other. The HOA brochure promised well-kept lawns, peaceful evenings, and rules that protect property values. Samantha barely skimmed it. She figured it was just reminders about trash day and keeping the pool clean. For a year, life was exactly what they'd dreamed. Weekend barbecues, bike rides with their 2 kids, evenings spent on the back deck listening to crickets. But small signs of something sharper lurked beneath the postcard charm. A board member frowned when Mark planted a row of tomatoes along the fence. A neighbor casually mentioned that some folks didn't like the color of their shutters. And once, Samantha noticed a man she didn't know measuring the edge of their lawn, clipboard in hand, before disappearing without a word. They brushed it off, until a letter arrived that would shatter the calm and make Samantha wonder if the neighborhood she loved was really a trap waiting to spring. The first notice seemed harmless enough, a single sheet of paper in a crisp white envelope. Violation. Unapproved garden structure, it read in stiff black letters. A polite warning, a request to remove or apply for approval within 10 days. Mark laughed it off. They can't seriously care about a tomato patch, he said, tossing it on the counter. Samantha wanted to believe him, but 3 days later, another letter arrived. Then another. This time, the language was sharper, immediate action required. Daily fines will accrue. The number at the bottom, $50 a day, made Samantha's stomach turn. When she called the HOA office, a calm voice told her the board had received complaints about unsightly vegetation and potential wildlife hazards. Samantha asked who complained. The voice didn't hesitate. That information is confidential. By the next week, the fines reached $300. Then came the late-night visits. Headlights flickered across their lawn at midnight. Someone rattled the gate and left muddy footprints by the deck. The kids woke up crying when the doorbell rang after dark and no one was there. Mark installed a motion camera. The footage showed a man in a reflective vest, clipboard in hand, walking the perimeter of their yard. Each time he left before dawn, the board meeting was their chance to fight back. Samantha rehearsed her speech, calm, reasonable, with photos of the neat garden. But when they arrived, the room was stacked against them. 5 board members sat behind a folding table like a panel of judges. Neighbors filled the chairs, whispering. Before Samantha could finish her first sentence, the president, a sharp-eyed woman named Carol, cut her off. The bylaws are clear. Any garden structures require prior approval. You failed to comply. Mark tried to explain that it was just a small raised bed. Carol leaned forward. Your property is part of a collective. Your choices affect everyone's value. A man in the crowd muttered, "Rules are rules," and several heads nodded. The motion to fine them passed in under 2 minutes. After that night, the letters multiplied. Fines for improper lawn edging, non-standard mailbox color, even visible children's toys. It felt like harassment. Each notice a reminder that someone was always watching. Then, one Friday morning, Samantha stepped outside to find a bright orange sticker slapped across the front window. Final warning, lion pending. Her heart dropped. A lien meant they could eventually seize the house. Their dream home was becoming a financial trap. The couple considered hiring a lawyer, but the estimates were staggering, thousands of dollars just to start. Mark's voice grew tight with anger. "They're trying to bleed us until we sell," he said. "That's their plan." That night, Samantha found an anonymous note in the mailbox. "You won't win. Better to move." No signature. No handwriting she recognized. Desperate, Samantha began digging through the HOA's public records. What she found was worse than she imagined. Carol and 2 other board members had quietly approved a zoning change that would allow them to purchase surrounding lots at a discount if current owners left. Their property, with its wooded edge and creek access, was prime for expansion. The garden wasn't the problem. Their land was. When Samantha confronted Carol in the driveway, the woman's smile was chilling. "You signed the agreement when you bought the house," she said. "It's all legal. Maybe this neighborhood just isn't a good fit for you." That night, a storm rolled in, thunder shaking the windows. Samantha lay awake listening to the rain pound the roof. Every flash of lightning lit up the trees outside like a warning. She imagined the board members, dry and comfortable, plotting their next move. Mark whispered, "We can't let them win." And in that sleepless dark, a plan began to form, one that would turn the board's own rules against them. The next morning, Samantha filed a formal records request for every complaint, every fine, every meeting transcript. The HOA tried to stall, but state law was on her side. Inside those documents, she found inconsistencies, signatures missing, dates altered, votes taken without quorum. If she exposed them, the entire board could be forced to resign. But would that be enough to stop the harassment? Or would it make them even more dangerous? As the weeks passed, the tension thickened. Anonymous cars idled outside their home at night. A dead branch, neatly sawed, appeared on their porch. No note, just a silent threat. Samantha's hands shook each time she checked the mail. Mark kept the motion camera rolling, reviewing every clip before bed. The kids started asking why the clipboard people hated them. One evening, while Mark was at work, Samantha heard footsteps on the gravel drive. She looked out to see Carol herself standing by the mailbox, flashlight in hand, jotting notes. When Samantha stepped outside, Carol turned slowly, her smile as sharp as broken glass. "Just checking compliance," she said. Then she added, almost sweetly, "You can still avoid the lien if you agree to sell." Samantha's fear hardened into resolve. She wasn't leaving. But she knew the next move had to be bold, something that would catch the board off guard and make every neighbor finally see what was happening. And that move was almost ready. Rain hammered the roof as Samantha carried a thick manila folder into the crowded community hall. The monthly HOA meeting was already buzzing, neighbors filling every chair, whispers weaving through the air like static. Tonight's agenda had a single line in bold: lien enforcement, 42 Willow Creek Lane. Her address. Mark squeezed her hand before they stepped inside. "No turning back," he murmured. The board sat like a tribunal behind the folding table, Carol at the center, flanked by her allies. Their expressions were smug, certain of victory. Carol tapped the microphone. "Order. We are here to finalize penalties for repeated noncompliance. Unless there are objections, we will proceed to vote on foreclosure authorization." Gasps rippled through the room. Samantha's chest tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "I object," she said, stepping forward. "And I have evidence." A murmur swept the crowd. Samantha opened the folder and began sliding documents across the table. According to State Statute 720-303, all board actions must be recorded with proper signatures and quorum. These notices, she held up a stack of HOA letters, are missing dates and board signatures. Meeting minutes from April and May, no quorum. Illegal votes. Carol's smile faltered. "These are private board matters," she snapped. "Not when they threaten my home," Samantha shot back. Her voice carried through the hall like a spark catching dry grass. She pointed to a highlighted paragraph in one of the records. "And this? Approval of a zoning variance allowing board members to buy adjacent lots for personal profit? That's a breach of fiduciary duty." The room erupted. Neighbors whispered loudly, some pulling out phones to snap photos. One man shouted, "Is that true, Carol?" Another woman stood. Did you plan to buy our land? Carol banged the gavel. Sit down. These accusations are baseless. Samantha's heart pounded, but she pressed on. Baseless? Here are the county filings with your signatures. Here are emails where you discuss pressuring homeowners with fines until they sell. And here, she held up a motion camera, still of the man trespassing at night, is proof of harassment under your watch. Carol's face went pale. For the first time, her polished confidence cracked. She turned to the board members. Don't listen to this. She's twisting everything. But the other members shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the growing crowd of angry neighbors. One cleared his throat. Is this accurate? The tension snapped like a live wire. Voices overlapped, neighbors demanding answers, board members arguing. Someone yelled, "Call the county inspector!" Another shouted, "I want an audit!" Carol slammed the gavel again, but the noise swallowed her. Samantha seized the moment. I've already contacted the state's HOA Oversight Division, she announced. They have these documents. If this board doesn't dissolve tonight, they'll file charges for fraud and harassment. A heavy silence fell. Then a board member, an older man with silver hair, pushed back his chair. I resign, he said quietly. Another followed. Within seconds, 3 of the 5 board members walked out. All eyes swung back to Carol, her jaw clenched. You think you've won? She hissed. But her voice lacked force. Samantha felt a surge of energy, fear, anger, and something fiercer, vindication. This neighborhood deserves honesty, not intimidation, she said, her voice steady. Effective immediately, I moved for a vote of no confidence in the current president. Hands shot up across the room. One after another, neighbors raised their arms until nearly every person stood. Carol's gavel slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. But the night wasn't finished. As people crowded forward, Carol grabbed the microphone, eyes blazing. You think you're safe now? She spat. You'll regret this. Without leadership, this place will fall apart. Property values will tank. You'll all suffer, her words echoed, brittle and hollow. Then someone from the back shouted, Better no president than a corrupt one. Applause erupted, drowning her out. Carol shoved through the crowd, face tight with rage, and disappeared into the storm outside. Rain roared against the hall's tin roof as the neighbors gathered around Samantha, voices buzzing with relief and adrenaline. A retired teacher offered to chair an interim committee. Others volunteered for a new election. Mark wrapped an arm around Samantha's shoulders. You did it, he whispered. She exhaled for the first time in weeks. The fear that had gripped her chest began to loosen, but only slightly. Because as the meeting broke up, Samantha caught sight of Carol standing in the parking lot, lit by a flickering street lamp. Umbrella gone, hair plastered to her face, she stared back with an expression Samantha couldn't quite read. Rage, maybe, or a promise of something still unfinished. Samantha closed her umbrella and met that stare until Carol finally turned and walked into the darkness. The battle was won. But the war for Willow Creek Lane might only be beginning. The storm finally broke overnight, leaving the neighborhood hushed and dripping. When Samantha stepped outside the next morning, the air smelled of wet earth and pine. For the first time in months, there was no envelope on the door, no clipboard stranger measuring the lawn, only quiet. Inside the kitchen table was a small mountain of evidence, meeting minutes, county filings, camera photos, everything she'd collected to fight the board. She poured coffee, staring at the stack that had once felt like a burden and now looked like armor. By noon, word of the dramatic meeting had spread beyond Willow Creek Lane. A local reporter knocked, asking for an interview about the HOA takedown. Samantha declined the camera but gave a short statement, careful to keep the focus on transparency and community. It wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness. That evening, neighbors came by one after another. Some brought cookies, others just gratitude. The retired teacher, Mrs. Hargrove, hugged Samantha so tightly she could feel the older woman's heart beating. I didn't know how bad it had gotten, Mrs. Hargrove whispered. You saved our street. Within days, the county posted an official notice. The HOA board was under state investigation for financial misconduct and harassment. Carol's name appeared in the filings alongside a list of questionable property transactions. 2 board members agreed to cooperate with investigators, handing over emails that confirmed everything Samantha had uncovered. Carol lawyered up but stayed silent, refusing interviews as the press started calling. The neighbors held an emergency election the following week. For the first time, people who had avoided meetings for years showed up in droves. Parents with strollers, retirees with canes, teenagers curious about the commotion. They voted to rewrite the bylaws, cutting the board's power and requiring full public disclosure of all future decisions. When the results were announced, Samantha felt a strange mix of exhaustion and pride. She had never wanted a leadership role, but the community nominated her as interim president until a permanent team could be chosen. She accepted, not out of ambition, but because she refused to let the vacuum invite another Carol. Meanwhile, investigators froze the HOA's accounts. Residents received letters canceling every fine issued in the past year. Families who'd been quietly paying unfair fees were promised refunds. The garden that had sparked it all now stood as a symbol of resistance. Neighbors left small flags and hand-painted signs along its edge. One read simply, "Grow free." But victory carried shadows. Even after Carol disappeared from public view, Samantha occasionally spotted a dark sedan idling at the corner late at night. No proof it was her, but the sight sent a cold tremor through her chest. Mark installed stronger locks and brighter lights, though he never said aloud what they both feared, that resentment can outlast a legal defeat. The kids, though, bounced back quickly. They helped Mark build a bigger garden bed and painted the mailbox a cheerful blue, without a single notice arriving to protest the color. As spring rolled in, Willow Creek transformed. Neighbors who'd barely exchanged waves before now planned potlucks and cleanup days. People lingered on porches to talk, sharing stories of small infractions and quiet fears they'd hidden for years. It turned out many had endured their own run-ins with Carol's regime, warnings for lawn ornaments, threats over fence heights, but no one had wanted to be the first to fight. Samantha realized that what she'd sparked wasn't just a board shakeup. It was a community awakening. One Saturday morning, she received a letter from the state HOA oversight office. The investigation had concluded. The former board, including Carol, was permanently barred from holding any HOA position in the state. Criminal charges for fraud and harassment were under review. Samantha read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and slid it into a drawer. Justice, at least on paper, was done. Still, she felt no glee, only a quiet, heavy relief. Winning hadn't been about humiliation. It had been about reclaiming the peace they'd been promised when they bought their home. Months later, the local paper ran a feature titled "The Neighborhood That Fought Back." The article praised the residents for restoring transparency and warned other communities to watch their boards closely. Samantha's name appeared only once, tucked in the final paragraph. Resident Samantha Hayes said she hopes their experience reminds people that HOA rules exist to serve homeowners, not control them. When Mark read it aloud, Samantha smiled. That single line said everything she wanted. The biggest change, though, was internal. The anxiety that had once clenched Samantha's stomach each time she checked the mail slowly faded. She could walk through her own backyard without scanning for hidden cameras or imagining headlights sweeping across the grass. The creek's gentle murmur, once a backdrop to fear, became a sound of freedom again. One evening, she and Mark sat on the deck as fireflies stitched the dark. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we just paid the fines and kept quiet?" he asked. "All the time," she said. "But then someone else would be sitting here waiting for the next notice." They let the night settle around them, the quiet a victory of its own. Samantha knew Carol might never forgive her. Maybe someday she'd show up again or send another veiled threat. But that possibility no longer ruled their lives. They had built something stronger than fear.